Welcome everyone. So, very good morning and assalamualaikum. So basically you are here for today's training, which is on the introduction to aviation legislation. So make sure you are in the right classroom, or if not then you need to find out whichever your correct classroom. So everyone here is in the correct class, right?
Yes.
Okay, alright. So before we begin with the training, first of all, I have already hand out the training notes for today's training. Right? So I would like to just you guys to make sure that you are having the correct training note and the correct revision. So this is the control number of your training notes, TD02RD001. Make sure you have the same revision number. So it should be issue 6, revision 1, dated 21st June 2024. So everyone have the correct version, right?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So before we begin with today's training, first of all, I would like to basically give a short introduction of myself. So my name is Faeez bin Saleh. You can just call me Faeez. So I'm going to be your instructor for today's training. So before we begin with the training itself, I'm going to do a very quite short introduction on the safety part of our organization. So we're going to do a safety briefing first before we begin with the training itself. So let me pull up the safety briefing presentation. Alright. So this is our safety briefing, and as usual we're going to have a look at the safety protocol or safety policy in our building. Right? So safety is always the Kuala Lumpur priority, so that is always first, safety first. And we of course need your full cooperation and your commitment in order for us to make sure everyone safety in our facility. And safety is everyone's responsibility, so that is our motto here at CAE Kuala Lumpur. So first thing that everyone needs to know is where is your nearest emergency exit. So how do you know where is the nearest location? So I'm going to brief you on the floor plan of our building, right? And I'm sure everyone is aware about this symbol, right? So there is a green running man. So that is where is our emergency exit are located. So always proceed to that symbol to find out your emergency exit. And the other symbol is this one. Anyone can answer. What is this symbol? Anyone familiar with this symbol?
Assembly point.
Correct. So that is your assembly point signage. So later I'll show you where is the exact location of our assembly point in the case of evacuation required from our building. Right. So before we begin with the floor plan itself, so let's have a look at the emergency procedure in CAE Kuala Lumpur. So we have the external threat on the left side, and we have the internal threat on the right side. Okay. External threat basically whenever we have any threat coming from outside of our building. In example, let's say in quite recent months, we have a gas leakage in the building in front of our facility, right? This is where we have the field before opposite of our building. So that is what we call as an external threat. Okay. So in the case of external threat, the procedure is basically we're gonna have an announcement. So it depends on the nature of the threat itself. For example, in the recent case where we have the gas leak threat outside of a building, so the instruction will be given from the PA system. So all the classroom, all the facility in this building have a centralized public announcement system. So you're gonna hear a speaker announcement given, and if there's an instruction to basically says that you are required to shelter within the building, then we can stay in the building. Okay, it all depends on the nature of the threat from the outside. But if the instruction says that okay, we need to evacuate the building, then we have to evacuate the building, right? So these are the example of external threat that might happen in this area. We might have a severe weather like storm, flooding. For so far, we don't have any this kind of severe weather happen, right? Gas leak is what we experienced quite recently. If there's any external fire from nearby building, okay, from the building behind our facility, so that's kind of a external threat. If there's any chemical spills, explosion, major accident in front of the building or at the back of the building, and others. So it's all depend on the nature of the threat itself. So what you need to do basically just follow the instruction from the safety coordinator. So there will be an announcement from the PA system. Alright, so that is on the external threat. So far clear?
Yes.
No question? Alright, good. Next one we have the internal threat. So in the case of any threat coming within the CAE KL building itself. So in an emergency that threatens you or others, you can trigger the alarm. So there's a break glass, as you can see on this box number 1 here. So the break glass located throughout the building, right? And you will see that the break glass will be in a red color break glass. Okay, so the red color shows that it will trigger the alarm. So you just break it and the alarm will be triggered. So what happens once the alarm is triggered, then there will be a safety officer that will have access to the fire control panel, right? So they will identify which other break glass has triggered the alarm. So they will send out personnel to have a look at the break glass itself, to have a look at the areas, what is exactly the threat that happened in the area, whether it's a fire threat or any other threat that might happen, right? So once they confirm the actual threat itself, then they will decide whether evacuation is needed or not. So this will be announced via the PA system. So that's number 2. Okay, so if they ask you to evacuate the building, so everyone needs to evacuate the building, move slowly towards your nearest emergency exit. Okay. So number 3 will be proceed to the nearest corridor and follow keluar or exit sign. So most of the exit sign will be in Malay lah, keluar, because we are in Malaysia, right? Number 4 will be locate the keluar exit door and leave the building. So this number 3 is the keluar exit sign. Okay. And usually above the door, the escape door, will be this symbol lah, keluar, and also that running man, green colored running man. Okay. And in the case of a certain door, so some of the door in our building is restricted, right? And if you are required to access that door in order for you to get out on that area, usually just beside the door you will have either two, whether it's a blue color break glass or a red colored red glass that have a physical key for that particular door, right? So some of the door is controlled magnetically, is locked magnetically. So when you break that, the magnet will be de-energized, so you can open the door. So usually it's in the blue color or in the green color, depend on that setup of the door, right? And at the same time, if that door is not is manually locked, then you just break this glass, then you will have that access to that physical key. So some of the classroom in our building will have this kind of a feature, right? So you just break it, take the key, and then you can manually open up the door, and then you can proceed to your nearest emergency exit. Okay. So example of internal threat, usually most common one is fire, right? So if there's a fire, then straight away we just proceed, exit the building. Okay. Smoke also, a visible smoke from a fire or another source. So smoke can also come, not just fire, it can come from other sources as well. It might come from short circuits, right? Fuel leak could lead to a fire or explosion. Electrical hazard that might produce sparks or electrical malfunction that can cause also fire. Chemical spill, which can cause fume or fire, because in our building we have a flight simulator, right? So this flight simulator might have a hydraulic that basically what we consider as a chemical. For air, we have a structural damage, so some part of the building is going to collapse. Then there's of course one of the internal threat and others as well, right? Just a note here. There is a fire trainer and cabin emergency evacuation trainer, CEET. So this is located behind the building. So the purpose of this fire trainer is basically to simulate fire that happen in aircraft. So this is used by the cabin crew training department, right? So during this training, when they are using these devices, it's going to generate a smoke because they want to simulate a fire, right? So do not worry, this is not an emergency situation. This is intentional smoke. So when you're walking behind the building and you see these particular devices, the fire trainer, and you see the smoke coming out from this particular device, then there's no need for you to trigger the alarm, or because this is not a threat, it's a intentional smoke, right, for the training purpose. Alright, so any question so far on the procedure? So this is for the external threat and this is for the internal threat.
No.
Okay, clear? Alright. Okay, next one. This is where basically we need to identify the nearest emergency exit location. So this is a floor plan for the first floor of our building. So currently we are in which classroom? This is Kuching classroom. So right now you guys are in this Kuching classroom, right? So Kuching classroom is situated in the staff building. So in the amber color building here, this is what we call as a staff building. This one blue color is a north building, right? So right now you guys in this building, Kuching classroom. In front of Kuching classroom we have the CAE office. This is a restricted space where only CAE staff can enter the area. But nevertheless, when you exit the Kuching classroom, where is the nearest exit? Which number? Which one can you see is the nearest exit?
5.
5 is the nearest, right? So straight away you go exit the door, turn left, you turn left, and then turn another left, take a right, and you can see the staircase. So this building is a 2-floor building. So when we are at the first floor, just take one step going to the ground floor, so you can exit straight away to the ground floor. Alright? In the case of a fire on the left side, so of course you won't run into the fire, right? So immediately proceed to the right, and we have another 2 options, number 6 and number 7, staircase. So all the staircase is leads to the emergency exit. Alright? And in the case of you are right now on the break, right? We are not in the classroom, so you're taking a lunch break or maybe a tea break, right? And you are situated somewhere in the north building, right? In the blue color. So just make sure where are the nearest exit. So example here, if you are in the link bridge area, mostly where this is where you can rest. There's a launch area here for all our customers, right? For you guys, you also can see here, relax there. And the nearest exit will be number 4 and number 5. Okay. Number 2 is another option, and the furthest will be number 1. And if you are also hanging out in the north lobby, because we also have a small cafeteria in the north lobby, there is a exit number 1 here as well. Alright, that's the staircase lah. In the blue area or the north building, we have this flight simulator hall. This is a restricted area, so you won't be able to enter this area. Alright, so you have the access to this area only. The front and the whole area of the south building except the CAE. Okay. Might as well on this floor plan, I'll show you the nearest washroom. So we are in Kuching, right? Just turn right, turn left, and just beside the staircase you have a washroom. Okay. And for Muslim trainees, there's a surau as well. Yeah. Alright. So then we have total 7 exit door or staircase. Since we are on the first floor, you have 7 staircase available. Okay, so if you are on the ground floor, most of the time you're gonna be here in the cafeteria during your lunch break. You're gonna be here. So if you are in the cafeteria, there is also a washroom here. Alright. So if you are in the cafeteria, the nearest exit will be here at number 10. That will be the exit just beside the staircase if you are coming from the first floor. So there's a staircase and there's the exit, right? So proceed to the exit, and what else? And of course you can see we have 13 exit door throughout the building. Okay. If you are in the middle lobby area, we have two, actually three lah. The main door. If it's not locked, just proceed to the main door. And we have optional another two lah, number 5 here, and also number 8 there. Alright. And of course, from this layout, you can clearly see where are they all going. They all going to this assembly point. Okay. So the assembly point is at the back of the building. There is a car park B. So we have two car park B. Car park A at the front of the building. Car park B is at the back of the building. So just proceed to the car park B. There is where our assembly point location, right? So you might enter the building from front here. This is where we have the guard post, right? So that is our assembly point. As I mentioned before, we have the fire trainer, the cabin fire trainer. This is the location of the fire trainer. So if you are somewhere at the back of the building and you can see a smoke clearly visible coming from a device, it's a red container, and the smoke coming from that red container, there is an intentional smoke, because that is for training purpose. Right? So there's no need for you to raise any alarm or whatsoever. Right? We also have a drill pool. Don't go to the area if you are not there for the training purpose, right? Because we feel that there's in case of someone accidentally fall into the swimming pool, alright? Okay, what else can we show here? Again, the flight simulator also is not accessible to the most of the students, only for the pilot that going for the training in the simulator, right? So this will be a restricted area as well. Okay, so as I mentioned, the assembly point is at the back of the building in the car park B. So basically at the corner of the parking lot, that is where we dedicated it as our assembly point. There's also a signage there, right? So this is a signage where you need to go and assemble in the case of evacuation. And once you're there, you need to report to the incident controller. So basically, in case we have any evacuation for today's, just report back to me. So I'll be there in the evacuation point, in the assembly point, to do a head count. So it's based on the attendance sheet. So later I'll provide you guys with the attendance sheet. So you need to sign off the attendance sheet so we can do a proper head count. So it's not just for attendance purposes, but it's also for emergency purpose, right? Okay, so if you spot an emergency, so now we know where to head, right? So just exit and turn left or turn right. If you spot an emergency, in the case of you are in the building, just walk around, right? Or if you are in the cafeteria, so what the first thing that you need to do is shout emergency. Shout loud, okay? Emergency or kecemasan, okay, or api or fire. So whatever it is, you just shout, right? To gain attention from everyone nearby. And if it's a fire, if you have an experience extinguishing a fire, or maybe you have seen some video and you feel that you are confident to handle that, right? So you can use this philosophy of PAS, P-A-S, PAS. Okay? So P stands for pool. So I think we have almost 200 fire extinguishers throughout the building. So we have a lot of fire extinguishers, right? So what you need to do is you just pick up the fire extinguisher. There's no need for you to check the expiry date or no. This is an emergency situation, right? So just straight away you pick up your fire extinguisher. First step is pull the pin. Very simple. Pull, because the pin is there for safety purpose. We don't want anyone to accidentally press the fire extinguisher. So we pull the pin first. A is aim at the fire, extinguishing at the base of the fire. Okay, so you take the nozzle of the extinguisher, show it to the base of the fire. You don't try to aim at the top of the fire. Okay, because we try to restrict the oxygen at the base, because at the base this is where the fuel of the fire coming from. So we want to restrict the oxygen, so that's the purpose of the fire extinguisher, to restrict the oxygen directly at the base of the fire where we have the fuel. The fuel can be a fuel itself, it can be a fire, it can be a wood, right? Whatever it is. So directly aim at the base of the fire, not at the top or at the middle of the fire, just at the base. Okay? And the third step will be as squeeze. So you squeeze the handle while at the same time you are holding the nozzle to the base. Squeeze it. Right? And last one will be sweep, as for sweep. So you sweep to the base of the fire. Don't just focus on that one spot of the fire. The idea is to extinguish the fire by suffocating the fire, because we want to remove all the oxygen by replacing it with the extinguishing agent inside this extinguisher. Alright? So that is the step. Pass. So once you are able to extinguish the fire, or if you're not able to extinguish the fire, doesn't matter. Maybe the fire becomes too strong for you to handle it. Then next step will be to break the break glass. Again, as a reminder, it should be in red color. The red color break glass is the one that will trigger the alarm. Okay. If it's a blue or green color, that one is just to release the door. Okay. Okay. So if it's out of control, of course you don't stay and wait for the fire. Okay. Straight away go to the nearest exit door and proceed to the assembly point at the back of the building. Alright. Okay, if it's in the case of not a fire or not a severe crack, it's just maybe a small injury that happened to you or maybe to your colleagues, and when you are in this building, we have multiple first aid kit available throughout the building. Right? So we have 4 in the ground floor. In front of cafeteria, we have 1. Okay, so this is how it looks like. The first aid box. Right? Number 2 in the drill pool or the swimming area. So you might not be there because you are not here for that training. Okay. Number 3 in the door trainer and also the fire trainer. Okay. This is for cabin crew training. Right? You also might not be here. Maybe you are here in the cafeteria, number 1. And the last one will be in the north lobby. Okay. So we have 1 in the north lobby, we have 1 in the south lobby, and we have 2 at the back of the building. Right? So it's not just the first aid. We also have an AED, automated electronic defibrillator, which is just beside the first aid kit. So this is where, if you are trained as a first aider, you know that the AED function is to shock the victim in the case of their heart is not working anymore. Right? So that's the first aid, that's the AED. So all the location, all 4 locations consist of first aid and also AED. Okay, and for the first floor, the nearest would be here lah, number 3, Kuching, just in front of our classroom. Okay, in front of our CE office. So we have first aid kit and also the AED. The other 2 locations would be 1 in the link bridge area. Okay. Last one will be this one inside the flight simulator. So you might not be able to access it because it's a restricted area. But for you guys, we have number 3 and number 1. Okay. So you won't find Panadol inside. This is for first aid purpose. Okay. So Panadol is not considered as a first aid requirement. Okay. That one for Panadol you can ask from your friend if they have any. We don't provide that in our first aid kit. It's for the small injury, right? Okay. Okay. Emergency announcement. Okay. So when there is an emergency announcement is made, you evacuate immediately. Again, when you hear the bell, the emergency bell coming, maybe someone is triggering that bell, right? So what you need to do is basically just wait. You don't straight away evacuate the building. We need to have a safety collector to verify first that alarm right? So once they verify it, they will make announcement. Okay, everyone, there is a false alarm, so there's no need for evacuation. Then just stay put lah. Just stay in the classroom, and then we continue our training as usual. But if the emergency says, okay, everyone, please evacuate building safely, then we start to evacuate lah, right? So just wait. Okay. But if there's a fire in the classroom, you still need to wait for announcement? No, right? So straight away you evacuate lah. Common sense lah, common sense. But if you are in a normal environment, nothing happen, tiba-tiba there's a bell, okay, emergency bell, then wait for the announcement first. Okay, so once the announcement has been made, go to the nearest exit and meet at the assembly point. And of course, report to incident controller. In this case, I will be the one of the incident controller to do the head count for all the training in my class. Okay, general safety throughout the CAEKL facility. Do not drive fast in the vicinity of CAEKL. Alright, so you are coming using your vehicle in our compound, then don't drive fast. Follow the speed limit of 25 kilometers per hour. Okay. Be mindful of pedestrian and vehicle as well. So we have quite restricted space in the car park also. So be mindful of various pedestrians that walking around in the compound. Be careful and considerate when parking or removing vehicle, right? And pedestrian to use designated walkway. So you're gonna see, I believe this morning when you come into our facility, right? You're gonna see the pedestrian walkway is all in the yellow colored part, alright? And number 4, always be alert on moving vehicle. Always look left and right before you are crossing the street. Okay. Within the building itself, so number 1 will be do not tailgate or jump over turnstile check-in access. I believe this morning you already registered before you enter our building, right? So you need to register your details in order for you to have the QR code, right? So do not jump over that turnstile or tailgate someone else, okay? Or you just follow without scanning the QR code. Okay, make sure you enter the turnstile one by one. Same goes when you want to exit the building. Do not tailgate or jump over the turnstile. Number 2, report all hazard using QR code. So you're gonna see multiple QR code has been displayed throughout in this building. So if you identify if there's any hazard within the building, right? Yeah, there is a QR code available for you to scan, and then from there you can simply report whatever hazard that you find. Or if you don't want to use the QR code, you can straight away inform me, okay? And I will do the reporting. I will do the QR code reporting on behalf of you. Number 3, use water dispenser machine hygienically. So throughout the building we have multiple water dispenser, and of course you don't have your bottle straight away to the spout of that water dispenser. Okay, this is for hygiene purpose. And number 4 would be beware of slippery floor, especially in the restroom or the washroom. Okay, and of course in the surau area as well, because we have open tap inside the surau, so there is a slippery floor. Be careful in the surau and also in the washroom. Another safety within the building is safety at the staircase. Number 1, do not read or send message via handphone while walking on the staircase. If need be, move away from the stair to a safe place. Okay, while you are walking at the staircase, just keep your phone okay, your hand is to hold the handle of the staircase. Don't texting or read or send a message while you are on the staircase. Number 2, follow safety guidelines posted on the staircase area. So we always put this warning in the staircase area. Always have one hand, hold the handrail. Carry your bag, hooks hang over your shoulder or grip with the other hand, and have a firm footing on the step. Make sure you look at where you are stepping. And then we have last one will be a smoking area within the building itself. Is a reception space where no smoking is allowed at all. Okay, all other areas in CAE is prohibited. We only have two designated smoking areas. Okay, one is at the back of the building. So if you are in the cafeteria, just go back and then straight to the right side. We have one smoking area here. Okay, and the other will be in the north building. Just behind this north lobby, you can exit through here or from the front door of the north lobby, go all the way to this smoking area. Okay, so that is the only two areas where you can have a smoke. So that's all for the safety briefing. Any question?
No.
No. Good. All right. Next one. Let's have a look at the registration form. Okay, so I have here in front of me is an attendance sheet for today's training. Okay, so basically you just need to check your names, spelling, everything, and then sign off on your names only. Do not sign on behalf of your friend or your colleagues. Okay, only sign if you are there, right? And once you sign this attendance sheet, I would like you guys to use your phone and then scan this QR code. So you need to scan the QR code because basically we want to have your names, your details, everything in the form for the purpose of issuing a certificate. Okay. So it's basically whatever that you enter inside the form will be visible in your certificate that will be issued later on. Okay. So make sure you don't do any typo. Don't do any typo in this form, so that you can have a correct spelling inside your certificate. Okay, so everyone have your phone and then scan the QR code. You have any difficulty accessing internet here? So the internet in this building, the signal strength is quite weak, so just bear with the speed. Okay, yeah? Alright? Okay, so before we begin with the training itself, a little bit about myself. So we're going to go through this instructor profile. So once we get to know each other, I'll do my introduction first, then later on we go around the classroom and then you do a short introduction from your side. Okay? Then only we go into the program itself. I'll brief you guys on the plan, etc. Okay, so my full name is Faeez bin Saleh. I'm the Quality Assurance Manager here at CAE Kuala Lumpur for the engineering training. Right? I'm also still an instructor, so I still have that passion as an instructor. Not just an instructor, I'm also a regulation subject matter expert. So any training related to regulation, like this one in aviation legislation, I'm the SME that has been assigned to handle this subject. And also a lead auditor that has been certified under ISO 9001-2015. My aviation experience, I've been in the industry for 15 years already, right? And my aircraft maintenance within the industry is 3 years. As an instructor, 12 years already, more than a decade. And as a quality auditor, I've been holding that role for 3 years already. So some of my experiences that I gathered within this industry, currently I'm in CAE Kuala Lumpur as a quality assurance manager / instructor as well. Previously it was a AACE, Asian Center of Excellence. It was a 50-50 joint venture between CAE and the Asia Academy, right? So they call it AACE, Asian Aviation Center of Excellence. So I was an instructor before this. Before I become a quality assurance manager, I was an instructor on avionics. and also regulatory instructor. So avionics meaning all the we used to conduct basic training here for IASA program. Right? So I'm teaching all the avionic modules, module 3, 4, 5, etc. Okay. And before I become this avionic regulatory instructor, I was a trainee. So I start off here at AACE as a trainee instructor for 1 year here. Then they promoted me to instructor. Then become the QM lah. Prior to join AACE and CAE, I was working in International College of Yayasan Melaka as an avionic instructor. This is one of the 147 organization in Malaysia that conduct basic training. I was there as a avionic instructor for I think for 2 years already. Prior to that, my experience in the industry itself, on Transmart as a case, I was working as a maintenance planner there. Prior to that, there's one company in Melaka Airport, Batu Berendam Airport in Melaka. Sparrow Senyum Berhad, I was working there multiple role lah, as a technical representative and also as a avionic technician. I was working there 2 years ago. Alright, and prior to that, I was a graduate lah from UNIKA. So some of my certification and qualification and certificates. I've been certified as a lead auditor at the British Standard Institution Training Academy. So I have this certificate to become a quality assurance manager. At the same time, also I attended aviation auditor training course in aviation quality services from German. Okay. I attended multiple courses related to my role, related to my subject. So as you can see, there's a lot of training that I've attended. So as you can see, most of it is quite related to the regulation, regulation subject. So that's why I become the SME on this subject. Right? So it's still a lot of training related to the regulation. Some of it on basic first aid. This is related to my function now as a quality assurance manager. This one is the most basic one to become instructor. You need to have this training course. So I have that as well. And this is my basic knowledge that I gained before I joined into industry. I was a graduate from UNIKL. Anyone from UNIKL can hit? No? Okay, never. Right, so I hold a diploma in aircraft maintenance technology in avionic maintenance. Alright, so that's about me. I would like to now go over some of you. Right? So basically, I would like you guys to introduce yourself. Right? Just tell me your name, your position, and where is you are working, what is your company. Right? And also, what is your experience related to the subject. In this case, our subject on the aviation legislation, whether you have attended similar course like this before. And then what is your expectation from the training? Boleh ya? Alright. Okay, so let's have the first one from...
Good morning, sir. My name is Shafiq. Currently, I'm working with the ADE. I just joined ADE 6 months ago.
Okay.
My position here in ADE is a technician. Right? I no experience regarding the LH. Right? So I expecting to know more regarding LH by attending this training.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your introduction. So next one, we're gonna have a look at the course outline. Alright. So this is basically the session plan and schedule for 2 days training. Okay. So I'll be your trainer. Okay. For 2 days day is 14 January 2025. So the program itself, the training itself will be Introduction to Aviation Legislation. Okay. So the duration of this 2 days plan is just 2 hours duration. So what are the learning outcome? So I'm going to introduce you with this learning outcome, but at the end of the training later on, we'll check back again with this learning outcome whether you guys have achieved this outcome or not. Okay. So the first outcome is basically where at the end of the training, you will be able to familiarize with the knowledge of with the aviation legislation regulation to enable them to carry out their responsibility effectively. So you are working in the aviation industry. Of course, you need to know the basic knowledge of the regulation itself. So you will know the do's and don'ts of within the industry, all the terminology that we use within the aviation regulation. So you will be familiarized with this knowledge. Okay. Second one will be familiarized with the local regulation. So in Malaysia, we have a law on civil aviation industry. So the law will be in this document. They call it MCAR 2016, Malaysia Civil Aviation Regulation 2016 is the latest version issued by the Malaysian government. The third one will be, you will be able to demonstrate understanding of various CAM, Malaysian Civil Aviation Directive. So other than this document, the regulation itself, they will come up with another document, they call it Directive, CAD, Civil Aviation Directive. So we will have a look at various directives that issued by the local authority. Okay. And last one will be demonstrate understanding of various CAA Malaysia, Civil Aviation Guidance Material. There is another document that also issued by the same authority, CAA Malaysia. So they call it CAGM, Civil Aviation Guidance Material, CAGM. So you will have that basic understanding of the Malaysian Civil Aviation Regulation, Malaysia CAD, and also Malaysia CAGM. And of course, the overall knowledge of the aviation legislation here. Alright. So let's have a look at the plan for 2 days. Okay, so right now we are in the midst of introduction, right? So I already done the icebreaking, instructor profile, safety briefing we've done. Right now we are doing the course outline, okay, and training plan as well. Okay, so this will be the plan for today. I allocate 30 minutes for our introduction, okay. So once we done with this first stage of introduction, then we will have a look at the training itself. So module 1 will be the role of IQ. I'll explain later on what is the IQ. I believe some of you have some knowledge on this. Right? So what is ICANN, Convention on ICA, IKO, and also IQ and access. So we are using the whiteboard and as well as this projector for presentation. I will use this method of lecture, Q&A, and quizzes throughout the training. So I will allocate 10 minutes to do the module 1. On module 2, on the Civil Aviation Act, this is a Malaysian government law, right? So we have a look at the Act itself, the law, and also the role of Ministry of Transport. So Civil Aviation is under the Ministry of Transport. Also, we're going to have a look at the Act itself. It was issued in 1969. And of course, the role of the local authority. Here in Malaysia, we call CAM. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. CAM, right? Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia. I allocate around 10 minutes in this topic, in this module. On module 3, we'll have a look at the other authority. So in Malaysia, we have CAM, and other than CAM, there is also another important authority throughout the world. So we have a look at JA and YASA, what exactly these two. Okay, CAA UK, FAA, TCCA, and also ANAC. So I'll allocate around 5 minutes to basically introduce you guys to other important authorities throughout the world. Okay, number 4 modules would be on the regulation itself by the Malaysian Local Authority, by CAM. They call it CAR 2016. So inside the regulation, we have the regulation itself, and also we have the parts of regulation. So I'll explain later on what is the parts, what is regulation. Another 5 minutes will be allocated on the module 4. Module 5 will be the relationship between the various requirements. So this is where we have a look at the framework of the regulation. Why there is multiple different regulations introduced by the authority. So we're gonna have a look at different requirement by the authority. So they establish it in the different category. I can say it's a category. So we have initial airworthiness, continuing airworthiness, and also air operation. Okay. So I'll also explain what is exactly what's the meaning of airworthiness later on. Right. So we'll look at around 20 minutes for this part. Module 6 will be on the CAD, Civil Aviation Directive. So this is one of the learning outcome, right, on CAD, Civil Aviation Directive. So we have looked at the importance. When I say important, is basically a CAD that related to your work area. Okay. And other than that, we also look at the other CAD that might not really related to you, but it's good to know. Right. So I allocate that for 5 minutes. And last one will be on the module 7 on the CAGM, another learning outcome for today's CAGM. Okay, so we have looked at the important CAGM that relate to your work area. And of course, we have looked at the different CAGM, good to know. CAC, Civil Aviation Circular, and CN, Civil Aviation Notice. So what are the differences between these various documentation from our authority? So that will be another 5 minutes. So the core content itself will be around 1 hour. And once we done with the content itself, then we'll do the closing of the training. So we'll do a recap back on whatever that we learned previously, and I'll do a short summary. We'll do a Q&A session, so you guys not only can ask during the lecture itself, but if you have any additional question, then you can ask during the closing as well, right? And of course, we'll go back and have a look at the course outcome. We check again whether we cover all those objectives of today's training, okay? And we'll do the closing. That will be around 30 minutes. Okay, so far, any question on the plan for today? And by the way, we're gonna have a break every 30 to 40 minutes, okay? As part of a human factor, then of course we need to have a short break in between the training. Any questions so far?
No.
No? Good?
Good.
Alright, so it's been half an hour, so let's have a short 5-minute break. Then come back, we continue with the actual learning. Okay. Alright, so welcome back to the class. Okay, so now we begin with the training, right? So again, as a reminder before we start, so this is gonna be not a one-way communication. So I was hoping that throughout the training, it's gonna be an interactive section. This should be a two-way. So if you have any question, anything related to the training or anything that might not related, but you're just curious and you would like to know, just ask. Okay, raise up your hand and ask, and then I'll try my best to answer your question. Alright? So I hope we can make this as not just a lecture session, but also a two-way discussion. Okay, so let's start off with the role of International Civil Aviation Organization. So we have a look at the history part of before they become an ICAO. ICAO stands for International Civil Aviation Organization. This one, ICAO. Okay, prior to ICAO, they already have set up a similar organization, a similar convention or agreement. Okay, they call it ICAN. ICAN is the first convention. This one was held in 1903. This is a pre-World War. So this is established in Berlin, Germany, but there was no agreement reached at that time. In 1903, there were 8 countries that trying to came up with an agreement to basically establish a civil aviation law, okay, or civil aviation standard. Because at that time, the multiple countries at that time still in war, right? So they don't want to have a civilian aircraft get shot down from the military aircraft. Okay? So that's the intention, their first initial intention. That will be on the first convention. So that first convention, they don't have a name because no agreement has been reached, right? So they tried again after 3 years in 1906. Okay, the second convention, this time it was held still in Germany, but they have more participants. So in this time, there are 27 countries that joined this convention, and also still no agreement has been reached at that time. So they were discussing what are the things that they want to came out with, what are the things that they want to standardize throughout the world. And 6 years after that, finally they came up with the first standard that they would like to have. So this is in 1912. Their third convention, it was held in London. Okay? And at this time, they are allocating the first radio call sign for use by aircraft. So now every country have their own call sign, and so that they can identify which aircraft coming from which countries. Okay? So this is in 1912. And 10 years after that, pre-World War I, in 1922, they have ICANN, International Commission of Air Navigation, comes into force. So this is where they establish a standard that to be followed by all the countries that sign this convention or this or become a commissioner in this ICANN. This was signed in Paris and participated by 38 nations at that time. Alright, so after that, World War II happened. Okay, of course, at that time, war going on, no civil aircraft flying, right? And after the World War II end, they want to establish a standard, a regulation or a law that to be adopted by various countries in the world for civil aviation. So in 7 December 1944, finally we have the birth of the first agreement by various countries at that time. It was held in Chicago. So most of the time we call this as a Chicago Convention because it was signed by Chicago. And why they held in Chicago? Who's winning the World War II? US, right? So that's why US take that rule as oh, we are the winner. We want to have the convention in our country, Chicago. Okay? So they are the ones, the main sponsor. They are the main sponsor. Previously, the idea cannot be realized easily, but once the World War II ends, they can realize it easily because it's sponsored by the US themselves. Okay, so they decided that this new convention will replacing the old ICANN. So at that time, instead of 38 nations, they have more buy-in from various countries. So they have 52 signatories that become the contracting state. So the country that signed this agreement in Chicago Convention, they are bound to the contract. So we call this country as a contracting state. Yes.
Why all these countries become interested from 27, 38? More countries joining this convention.
Okay, so basically, thank you for the question. So basically, more countries has been interested in joining this convention because they start to gain independence. So most of the countries become independent, and that's why most of the countries able to sign and become the contracting states. Previously, most of the countries still has been conquered by various European countries, right? So after the World War II, most of the countries start to gain their own independence. Similar with Malaysia as well. At that time, Malaysia does not sign that because we still under the British rule, right? So in the future, once we gain our own independence, then we also become one of the contracting states. Okay, so that's why we have more participation from the countries because more countries start to gain their own independence. Okay, so the Chicago Convention is the internationally recognized requirement for civil air safety, and everyone is in the world is adopting and recognizing that this is the convention or the agreement that they want to sign and follow. Okay, so during that time in 1944, these are the representatives from the 52 countries. So everyone is signing the Chicago Convention. So these are one of the pictures from that convention. Okay, so how does the document, the convention itself look like and what are the content? So this is the front page of that document, Convention on International Civil Aviation. So you guys gonna be familiar with the term of ICAO, right? ICAO start coming from this one, International Civil Aviation. O is for organization. So Convention on International Civil Aviation is the official name, but most of us know this as a Chicago Convention because it was held in Chicago. So Chicago Convention. Actual name, Convention on ICA. So inside this document or this agreement, they came up with 96 article. We can say it's a clause in an agreement. What are the clause inside the agreement? So inside this they have 96 article. Okay, and this article is divided into 22 chapters. So some chapter will have 5 articles, some chapter will have 3 article or 1 article. So in total they have 22 chapter comprised of in total of 96 article. Okay? And they also then they also divided into 4 parts. So example here, part 1 is air navigation. So anything related to air navigation, they will be put under the part 1. And then chapter 1 is general principle and application of the convention. So how they're going to follow this convention. So inside this chapter 1 and part 1 they have article 1, 2, 3 and so forth. So after they're done with that chapter 1, they follow with chapter 2, another article 5, 6, 7, 8 and so on. Okay, so this is on article 3, article 4. I'm just showing you the example. So we're not going to go in details of the article itself. So basically on the 1, 2, 3, 4, this is where they're talking about the privilege that the contracting states have when they sign this agreement. Okay, so here another example of chapter 2. So chapter 2 still under part 1. So chapter 2 they follow article 5, 6 and so on. So the number of article is a continuous number. Article 6, article 7, right, and all the way to the last chapter. So last chapter will be chapter 22. Okay, so it will be under part 4. The last part will be part 4, chapter 22, article 96, the last article. Okay, so once they signed the agreement in 1944, December 1944, they all agree that okay, so we need to come up with the standard. Okay, once we sign the agreement, okay, we all bind to this contract. We need to have a body that not govern, basically establish the standard to be followed by this contracting state. So in order to establish that standard, we need a proper organization. Right? So in 1947, 3 years after that, finally they successfully established an organization which is right now is under the United Nations, is one of the agencies under United Nations. So this is the organization, ICAO, this is their logo. ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. So their HQ is in Montreal, Canada, okay. And they will apply their principle globally, meaning whoever the contracting state, they all will follow the same standard that established by this organization. They are just an organization. They establish the standard, but it's up to the contracting state themselves to adopt the standard. Okay, so they're going to establish the minimum standard required to be able to be recognized as contracting state, and the country themselves, because they have their own power, their own government, right? They are the ones that will make it as a law. The organization, the ICAO themselves, cannot make it as a law. They just say that okay, these are the standard. You guys sign the contract. Then, in order for you to be considered as still contracting state, you follow our standard. But it's up to the country themselves to establish their own law. Okay? We want it to be a law. ICAO cannot make it as a law. They just an organization came up with a standard. So here it says that contracting state have a National Aviation Authority (NAA). NAA is a term that every country gonna have their own authority that controlling the aviation industry. So for example, in Malaysia, who is Malaysia NAA? CAM. right? So who is the authority for UK? CAA UK. Who's the authority for US? FAA. So we have multiple countries, and each country have their own authority. Okay, so the authority we call them NAA, National Aviation Authority, but the naming is specific to each country. So the NAA themselves, like in Malaysia, CAAM, which is given power by the country government. So our government will enforce this, make it as a law, and give the CAM power to enforce and implement conformity with ICAO. Right? So our law will be based on the standard established by the ICAO. Okay, in October 1947, the same year after they established the ICAO, ICAO themselves become a specialized agency under the United Nations. Tahu kan United Nations? Kalau in Malaysia we call this PBB. PBB stand for what? Persatuan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu. Correct. Okay. So these are linked to the Economic and Social Council. They call it ECOSOC. Right? So what does it mean by this term, contracting state? So is Malaysia a contracting state? Yes, Malaysia is a contracting state of this Chicago Convention. So it is a state that signed the Chicago Convention and adherent state, meaning we are adhering to the contract, we are following that contract. As of January 2022, we have 193 ICAO members. Okay, meaning almost all countries in the world become a member of ICAO. They are all following the same standard. The only non-contracting state are the Policy and Liechtenstein. Okay, because this is a small country and they don't have an airport, so they don't see the need to establish their own civil aviation law. Right? And Malaysia, of course, is one of them. We signed the Chicago Convention in 1958, 1 year after we gained independence. Okay? So we gain independence, wait 1 year, we sign the agreement. Okay? We become the contracting states. So why does it need for us, for Malaysia, to sign this agreement? Cannot we establish our own standard? Okay, there's a reason why we have to sign this agreement. It's going to basically give us these the five freedom of air once we become a member of ICAO. Okay, so what are the things? The first one will be flying over country without landing. So there's a video later, I'll tell you later, but before we do that, I'll explain a little bit about this. Okay, flying over a country without landing. So for example, if you are from Malaysia, we want to fly to, let's say, Australia, right? So we want to fly over a certain foreign territory. In this case, from Malaysia to Australia, we might fly over Singapore airspace and also Indonesia airspace, right? So because we are a contracting state, since Indonesia is also a contracting state, Singapore also a contracting state, they all recognize, oh, Malaysia aircraft is safe to fly over our airspace because Malaysia is also a contracting state. We all following the same agreement, the same standard, right? So that is one of the first freedom, first advantage becoming the member. Number two, land at foreign country for a technical stop. So in the case of flying from Malaysia to Australia, we have a malfunction with the aircraft. So we have to do an emergency landing at Indonesia, for example, anywhere in Bali, for example, right? Bali airport. Then we have that ability because we are a contracting state and Indonesia also a contracting state. But this law usually has been granted because of previous aircraft don't have the capability to fly that far. So most of the aircraft, when they have to fly quite far, they have to land at a certain country for a refueling. Hence the technical stop. Flying to that country for technical stop, refueling, after the refueling, then they continue their flight to their destination. Number three, flying from one country to another country. So these are the first thing. In order for us to fly from, let's say from Malaysia to Singapore, both is contracting state, we can fly to this country. Flying from another country to own country. So once we from Malaysia to Singapore, now from Singapore flying back to Malaysia, we need to have that, else how can we have the aircraft back, right? So that's another advantage. It's not just freedom to fly, but also freedom to bring passenger. From Malaysia to Singapore, we want to bring passenger. From Singapore to Malaysia, back to Malaysia, we also want to bring back the passenger so that our aircraft make money, right? And last one, flying to country. So for example, from Malaysia, flying to Singapore, Singapore to Bali, Bali back to Singapore, and then back to Malaysia. So we can have multiple stop, still carrying passenger. For example, from Malaysia to Singapore, we can carry passenger, right? That will be under this, right? From Singapore to Bali, can we carry passenger? Yes, provided we have this advantage lah, flying to two countries. So from Singapore, flying to Bali, and then Bali back to Singapore, Singapore back to Malaysia, with this flying from another country to own country. So I'll play the video, and then you will see the explanation on this 5 freedom. And there is also additional new freedom has been introduced by ICAO. So let's have a look at the video first. Right?
Behind any commercial flight is more than a century of political negotiation and accords that dictate who, how, and where airlines can fly. Aviation is one of the most unifying industries worldwide because it is what brings the world together. The beginning of aviation agreements came with the 1944 Chicago Convention on International Civil Aviation. This convention established the UN oversight agency responsible for civil aviation, the International Civil Aviation Organization. The ICAO is recognized by every country worldwide except for Liechtenstein, Dominica, and Tuvalu. Of those, Tuvalu is the sole country to have an international airport, so that means that all but one sky-faring nation worldwide is part of the ICAO. Soon after its inception, the ICAO laid out 5 fundamental rights of aviation, known as the 5 freedoms of the air, which serve as a framework for international aviation agreements. Each freedom has varying levels of acceptance, but every developed country worldwide grants these rights to certain foreign airlines. The first freedom of the air is the right to fly over a foreign country without landing. Pretty much every commercial flight and commercial airline is allowed to do this. There are exceptions. The EU has a list of hundreds supposedly unsafe airlines that are not allowed in EU airspace, but there are no large airlines today restricted from certain airspace. It may seem like a given that foreign airlines can overfly countries, but the airspace above a country is sovereign territory of that country, more or less. There isn't actually an internationally recognized line of separation between sovereign airspace and space. Some say it's 19 miles above sea level, the highest altitude balloons and airplanes can fly, while others say it's as high as 99 miles, the altitude of the lowest stable orbits around Earth. The US classifies anyone who's flown 50 miles or higher above Earth as an astronaut. So that therefore means that the US recognizes 50 miles above Earth as the beginning of space. However, there are instances in which the US hasn't respected sovereignty below 50 miles. When space shuttle missions returned to Earth, they did so much like an airplane, with a slow horizontal descent down to a runway. Their descent paths were so long that they had to descend over foreign nations, such as Canada, below 50 miles altitude. And yet the US never requested permission from Canada to fly in their airspace. Just because airlines are allowed to fly over foreign countries doesn't mean that they can do so without restriction. Of course they need to be in contact with air traffic control, but they also need to pay what's known as overflight fees. Overflight fees are how airlines pay foreign countries they fly over but don't land or take off in for the use of their air traffic control services. Airlines still have to pay to use air traffic control in countries they land or take off in, but these fees are paid and calculated in different ways depending on the country. Overflight fees are nearly universal. The US, for example, charges $56.86 per 100 nautical miles. You may think that these fees are fairly inconsequential, since the only international flights that really fly over the US without landing are flights to, from, or between Mexico, Canada, and some Caribbean nations. However, the US is actually responsible for a huge amount of airspace, way larger than the US itself. It was allocated this airspace by the International Civil Aviation Organization, and since it provides air traffic control for this area, it also charges overflight fees. The US when flying to Northeast Asian destinations such as Japan, Korea, and China. In US oceanic airspace, however, airlines only pay $21.63 per 100 nautical miles. It may seem like these small charges would have little effect, but on long-haul flights, overflight fees can really add up. Especially with the razor-thin airline margins that you learned about in my Why Flying is So Expensive video, airlines do have to put consideration into where they fly based on overflight fees. Canadian overflight fees are notoriously expensive. They work on a variable cost structure based on takeoff weight and distance flown, so I won't go into actual numbers. Almost any flight originating in the US has to fly through expensive Canadian airspace en route to Europe, as you learned about in my video about the North Atlantic tracks. But airlines do have strategies to lower these costs. The most efficient route between San Francisco and Frankfurt goes north through Montana, up over northeast Canada, then across Greenland, Iceland, and down into Europe. However, airlines don't always use this route. On certain days with certain wind and weather conditions, they'll fly east through the United States, then enter Canadian airspace somewhere over Minneapolis or Chicago, so that they'll pay less in Canadian overflight fees. Complicated route planning software takes all the variables, weight, weather, overflight fees, etc., and figures out which route is most financially efficient, even if it wastes time or fuel. Moving on, the second freedom of the air is the right for airlines to land in foreign countries for technical stops. Essentially, that means refueling. Modern airplanes have ranges of up to 9,000 miles, so there's little need anymore for refueling stops. But in the past, they were crucial for long-haul flights. Shannon Airport in Western Ireland once received hundreds of flights per day, despite being located in an exceptionally rural area. The nearest large city to Shannon, Limerick, has a population of less than 100,000. But geographically, Shannon Airport is the nearest airport to the US. So back when airplanes had shorter ranges, they'd make a stop to refuel in Shannon before continuing on to their continental European destinations. During the era of the Soviet Union, almost no airline had permission to overfly the USSR, so airlines had to literally go the other way around the Earth. Nearly every flight between Europe and Asia was routed with a technical stop in Anchorage, Alaska to refuel. Obviously, this was incredibly inefficient. Today's direct Europe-Asia flights take between 10 and 12 hours, but back when they stopped in Anchorage, they took as many as 22 hours. Despite the huge range of airplanes today, there are still some flights that require refueling stops. Australia and New Zealand are almost exactly on the opposite side of the world from London, so any flight between the two places has to make a stop somewhere. On its London-Sydney flights, Qantas Airlines makes a stop in Dubai, and on flights between London and Auckland, Air New Zealand stops in Los Angeles. It is expected, however, that within weeks or days of this video going up, Qantas Airlines will announce a new direct route between Perth in Western Australia and London with their 787-900 Dreamliners, which would be the first direct commercial service in history between Europe and Australia. This 9,000-mile trek would take an immense 18 hours to connect the two continents. The third freedom of the air is pretty simple. It's the right to fly commercially from one's own country to another country. This is just like Air France flying Paris to New York, or Singapore Airlines flying Singapore to Dubai. Almost every international airline is granted this third freedom. The fourth freedom is just the inverse of this, the right to fly commercially from another country to one's own. There are really no instances where the third and fourth freedoms are granted separately. If an airline is allowed to fly somewhere, they're also allowed to fly back with passengers. The fifth and final official freedom is the right for an airline to fly passengers between two foreign countries on a flight originating or terminating in their own country. Now, this is very similar to the second freedom, and the second freedom and fifth freedoms are often, but not always, granted together. With the second freedom, Qantas is allowed to stop in Dubai to refuel, but if they're granted the fifth freedom, Qantas is also allowed to pick up new paying passengers in Dubai and fly them to London. Some examples of this freedom include Air India's New York, London, Hyderabad route, which is allowed to fly passengers between New York and London, Cathay Pacific's Hong Kong, Vancouver, New York route, which is allowed to fly passengers between Vancouver and New York, and Ethiopian Airlines Addis Ababa, Dublin, Los Angeles flight, which is allowed to fly passengers between Los Angeles and Dublin. But let's move on the sixth freedom. It may seem a little strange that there's a sixth freedom in the 5 freedoms of aviation. There are actually 9 total freedoms, but only the first 5 are recognized officially in the ICAO's 5 Freedoms Treaty. While freedoms 6 through 9 are widely accepted, they are not as universal, except for number 6. The 6th freedom is actually unbelievably common. It's the right for an airline to transport passengers from one foreign country to another via their own country. This is just like Air France taking passengers from New York to Dubai via Paris, or Korean Airlines taking passengers from Frankfurt to Tokyo via Seoul. As you can tell, having 6 freedom rights is basically a fancy way to say airlines are allowed to connect passengers. There are whole airlines that operate almost exclusively using 6 freedom rights. WOW Airlines and Icelandair take passengers from North America to Europe via Reykjavik, and Turkish, Qatar, Etihad, and Emirates Airlines take passengers mostly between Europe, Africa, and Asia via their Middle Eastern hubs. While each of these airlines do have some passengers only taking a direct flight to their hub, the vast majority of their traffic is connecting due to their geographic positions between population centers. I'll finish off by grouping the 7th, 8th, and 9th freedoms together, as you'll see they're quite similar and often come together. The 7th freedom allows an airline to fly between 2 foreign nations without connecting on to its home. The 8th freedom is the right for an airline to fly between 2 cities in one foreign country while continuing on to its own country. And the 9th and final freedom is the right for a foreign airline to fly between 2 points in a foreign country without continuing on to its own country. It's extremely rare for these freedoms to be granted, except for in the European Union. You see, the European Union has a single aviation market, meaning that any airline registered in an EU country is allowed to fly flights between, to, and from any airport in the EU. Budget airlines like Ryanair and EasyJet thrive on this regulation. Despite being an Irish airline, Ryanair is allowed to fly routes like Edinburgh to London, Paris to Lyon, and other domestic routes in foreign EU countries due to this single aviation market. There are almost no other instances where foreign airlines are allowed to fly domestic routes. Ryanair is also allowed to fly routes between 2 other EU countries, like Paris to Berlin, and from other EU countries to outside the EU, such as Barcelona to Fez, Morocco. This is also how Norwegian Airlines is allowed to fly long haul from Sweden, Denmark, and the UK to the US. Well, more or less. You may recall that Norway is actually not part of the European Union, so they're not part of the EU single aviation market. But interestingly, Norwegian Airlines is actually registered in Ireland, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and the UK in order to gain access to the EU single aviation market, as well as the Open Skies Treaty that allows unlimited and unrestricted flights between the EU and the US. There's one really interesting use of these treaties and regulations in the form of short-haul flights between the Caribbean and the United States. Norwegian Airlines offers flights during the winter months from Boston, New York, and Baltimore to Martinique and Guadeloupe. And these aren't extensions to their long-haul flights using 5th freedom rights. These are standalone flights in small airplanes. Boston and Baltimore don't even have Norwegian transatlantic flights. Normally a flight like this would never be allowed, but since Martinique is an overseas region and Guadeloupe is an overseas territory of France, they're also part of the EU single aviation market and the Open Skies Treaty. So, those are the 5, or rather 9 freedoms of aviation. Aviation is a very politically charged and complicated subject, but these freedoms do a great job of simplifying and standardizing airline regulations worldwide. I hope you enjoyed this Wendover Productions video. Videos like these are made possible by my amazing...
Okay. Alright, so based on the video you can see that IQ themselves recognizing the only 5 freedom of air, but each country can come up with their own alternative or optional freedom of the air. And you can see that the video mentioned about the freedom of number 7, 8 and 9 that mostly utilized in the European Union, meaning if you are registered somewhere in UK as an airline, you still can fly passenger from another country to another country as long as you are within the European Union environment or aviation industry. Right? So that's why here in Asia we have most successful low-cost airline in Asia, right? So AirAsia is not like Ryanair, which is they can only register as one country, which is can operate within the European Union. In here in Malaysia, for AirAsia to operate or fly domestic in another country, they have to register the airline in different country because they don't have the freedom of 7, 8, and 9. So in order for AirAsia to fly domestic within Malaysia, they have to register in as a AirAsia Malaysia. If they want to fly domestic in Thailand, within the Thailand destination, then they have to fly, then they have to register as a Thai Asia, Indonesia Asia, etc. Right? Because we don't have a similar environment like the European Union. We don't have that in ASEAN region. Okay. Let's have a look at the next slide. Okay, so if you still remember that inside the Chicago Convention we have that 96 article, right? So here I would just like to highlight one of the article, which is Article 37 here. Okay. So this Article 37 basically says that down here, the second paragraph, to this end, the International Civil Aviation Organization or ICAO shall adopt and amend from time to time as may be necessary international standard and recommended practices and procedures dealing with communication, characteristic of the airport, rules of air, airworthiness of aircraft, registration, licensing, logbooks, vehicle map, etc. So all these practices and procedure, mostly known as ICAO annexes or ICAO subs. Sub stand for standard and recommended practices and procedure. This one. Internationally standard and recommended practices and procedure. Subs. So ICAO does say one they established in 1947. They will came up with the standard. Standard that to be followed by the contracting state. Hence the ICAO subs. Right? So what exactly is ICAO sub? One of the standards that they came up with is this one. They call it ICAO annexes. So ICAO annexes is the ICAO standards, right, or recommended practices and procedures. So currently, as of today, ICAO has introduced 19 different annexes, right? So the ones that has been highlighted in red color is the ones that important or related to your job scope. Okay, since we are in the aircraft maintenance, so in aircraft maintenance we have the annex number 1, which is on the personal licensing. So inside annex 1 they talk about the licensing for pilot, licensing for the air traffic controller, and also licensing for aircraft engineer. So since we have an engineer for aircraft maintenance, the standard is inside the annex number 1. Annex number 6 is operation of aircraft. As an operator, we have mission operator, we are working with them, right? So we have the regulation inside annex number 6. 7, aircraft nationality and registration mark. If aircraft registered in Malaysia, we know exactly what is their registration, how it looks like. And annex 8 is the airworthiness of the aircraft. Later we'll dive into this as well. And last one, the most recently introduced in 2008 or 9, Annex 19, the SMS Safety Management System, the latest iteration from the ICAO. Okay, important annexes. Annex number 1, personal licensing. As I mentioned, they talk about the licensing for pilot, flight crew, air traffic controller, and also aircraft maintenance personnel. Annex 6 talking about operation of aircraft. So what are the minimum requirements that to be established in order for an airline to operate the aircraft? So what are the requirements that needs to be established by the airline in order for them to operate the aircraft? Annex number 8 is airworthiness of the aircraft. As an airline, they can fly the aircraft, carry passenger, make a profit, but at the same time, they still have to make sure the aircraft is safe to fly. So airworthiness is the worthiness of the aircraft to fly safely. Okay, airworthiness, safety of the aircraft is there. So what are the regulations to make sure the aircraft still safe to fly? So they put the standard inside annex number Okay, here specify uniform procedure for certification of the aircraft, meaning new aircraft built from aircraft manufacturer like Airbus, Boeing, right? They need to have a certification to be followed, a certain certification process that needs to be followed. So the standard is established under Annex 8, but once they sold the aircraft to operator, to airline, then the airline still need to make sure the aircraft still safe to fly. So they need to do maintenance, inspection on the aircraft. Alright, so that is on the ICAO themselves and their annexes. Any questions so far?
No.
Good. Alright. So let's have a look at the framework in Malaysia. Okay, so how does Malaysia, once they become a contracting state for the Chicago Convention, right? So how they adopt this ICAO standard, ICAO recommendation, and make it as a law in Malaysia. So it becomes a law so that everyone has to follow. The government of Malaysia decided that the law for the aviation industry needs to be established under Ministry of Transport, MOT, right? So under the MOT, as you can see, there's a lot of agency or bodies within the Ministry of Transport. I believe you guys familiar, the most famous one is this one lah, JPJ, right? So we have JPJ, anything related to land transportation, so that will be under JPJ for public and also for commercial vehicle. And then we have for laut, for seas, we have Jabatan Laut Malaysia, and then this one for road standardization, Jabatan Keselamatan Jalan Raya. We have MIROS, the one that do R&D for road safety, okay, and then we have train, Pembadanan Aset Kereta Api, the ones that manage KTM in Malaysia, monorail, LRT, they are all under this. And then we have various port commissioner, Suruhanjaya, Pulau Pinang, Pelabuhan Pulau Pinang, Bintulu, all those things lah. Right, but the ones that we want to have a look today is this one. Okay, this is a pihak berkuasa penerbangan awak, that's in Malay. So in English is Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia. Okay, so they are the ones that handles, that been given the power by the Malaysian government and the Ministry of Transport to govern the civil aviation industry in Malaysia. And other than CAM, we also have another agency related to civil aviation, which is this one, Biro Siasatan Kemalangan Udara, AAIB, Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, AAIB. Okay, so we have two, AAIB and CAM. This one only involved when there's an incident within Malaysia civil aviation industry, but this one the ones that handle the law, the regulation, the implementation. Okay, so the function of the MOT, Ministry of Transport, all this basically to formulate, implement land transport, logistics, maritime, and aviation policy. So they just not focusing on aviation, but everything in Malaysia, right? Also on aviation infrastructure projects, if they decide, okay, we need to come up with a new airport, extend a bigger airport, that kind of thing. So they are the ones that lead this, giving the approval, right? Giving the fund to the organization or any company that would like to have this. Spearhead the integration of holistic national transportation system. Integration, for example, like interconnecting between airport, there's a high-speed train to the city center. From the city center, we have all these various transportation via train, via taxi, via e-hailing, via what else? Buses, right? So all this is a integration. This will be managed by the MOT. They are also the ones that enforce law to the various land transport, logistics, maritime, and aviation, determine fee and charges, regulate compliance to legislation, facilitate business related to this aviation industry as well, and also spearhead regional and international cooperation program in the field of transport. Okay, so specifically to the air transportation, the MOT, in order for them to make it as a law, So once we sign the agreement with the Chicago Convention, we become the contracting state. So in order for the government of Malaysia to enforce the regulation, they came up with an act or akta, right? So the first act that introduced by the Malaysian Parliament, by the government, is Civil Aviation Act 1969. Okay, so it's quite 12 years after we signed and become a member of the Chicago Convention, member of IPO. So after 12 years, finally we came up with Act number 3. So Act number 3 is Civil Aviation Act 1969. But there's also a various multiple acts that support the first act. So we're just going to have a look at the first act. And the act is just an act. Basically, they give the power from the government to the Director General or Chief Executive Officer of CAM to enforce the regulation, the law. Right? So the regulation itself is inside this document, Civil Aviation Regulation 2016. Okay, this is the second version. Before that, we have 1996 regulation. The most recent one is 2016 regulation. Okay, of course we have this old act that has been superseded by the recent Civil Aviation Act. So before that we have Aerodromes Act in Sabah, Air Navigation Ordinance in Sabah, Sarawak. So all this has been superseded by a single act, the Civil Aviation Act 1960. Okay. Yeah, so other than the Civil Aviation Act 1969, these are the other acts that related to civil aviation. The most recent one is this one, Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia Act 2017. So when they introduce this act, they are having a transition of a regulation. So for the first one is this one, Civil Aviation Amendment Act 2015. This is where at that time we have a transition from the old regulation, National Civil Aviation Regulation or MCA 1996. They convert it into a new regulation. They call it MCA 2016. So that's the latest regulation. And then they came up with Civil Aviation Act 2017 amendment. So we have the main one, right, 1969, and then in 2017 they make an amendment. So in this amendment, in this act, the power, instead of given to DGCA, Director General of Civil Aviation, the power given by the government to Chief Executive Officer of CAM. Previously, it was known as DCAM, Department of Civil Aviation Malaysia. Now it's under CAM, Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia. Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned, another act introduced in the same year, so they amend the act and also they introduced a new act, CAM Act 2017. So the transition of bodies from under the government agency, it becomes independent under CAM, Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia. So DCAM previously held by the DGCA, appointed by government of Malaysia. So now it becomes CAM, which is headed by the Chief Executive Officer of CAM, also nominated by the government of Malaysia. Alright, so on the right side here, this is the example of the actual act, the cover page only. The CAM Act 2017, Act number 788. This one is the Civil Aviation Act 1969, the first one here. Right. Okay, so inside the act itself, we're gonna have a look at the some of the important element inside there. We're not gonna go in details, right? So under Civil Aviation Act 1969, Part 2, Section 3. Okay, so here we talk about this power to give effect to the Chicago Convention and regulate civil aviation. So they basically says that now Malaysian government going to follow the Chicago Convention. So who's going to enforce this Chicago Convention and make it as a law? So they talk about this, the power. Okay. So the minister may make such regulation as he considers necessary to give effect or better carrying out the object purpose of this act, to provide generally for regulating civil aviation and for carrying out Chicago Convention, any annex to it and any element of such convention and annex. We're talking about 19 annexes, right? So these are the ones that basically give the power to CAM Malaysia to enforce the act. And then under section 24O, under part 9 here, every notice, circular, directive, information issued under this act or under subsidiary legislation made under this act shall be published by Director General in such manner as his opinion will ensure that notice, circular, directive, information is brought to the attention of the person who has to comply with such notice, circular, directive and information. So under section 24O basically saying that whatever documentation such as notice, circular, directive and information issued by the ones that have the power, in this case the Director General of Civil Aviation, or in most recent one we call them as a CEO, Chief Executive Officer of CAM. So any regulation issued by the CEO of CAM shall become a law. Right? So because this is under the Act. Right? So if we look into the structure of the regulation in Malaysia, basically under the Malaysian Parliament, Government of Malaysia, they introducing this Act 1969, Act number 3, right? So inside this Act we have divided it into 10 part, 28 section and 1 schedules. So the Ministry of Transport introducing the regulation, MK, Malaysian Civil Aviation Regulation, which comprise of 209 different regulations divided into 28 parts, and they have additional 3 schedules. And CAM themselves will publish multiple documents such as this lah, CAD, CADM, CSC, CAN, COD, AISD, SI. So all this will be explained later on. What are the different documents here? What are the meaning and also what's the function of this document? Later we have a look at that one. Alright. So that is the structure of the Malaysian regulation. Act will adopt IQ Annex. Regulation will be made by the MOT, and also CAM will publish multiple documents to support the regulation. Regulation to support the Act. Act basically says that we're going to follow Chicago Convention. Okay, so far any question? No? Good?
No.
Alright. Okay, so following with that, we talk about the CAM themselves. So this is the history nature of the CAM. Before they become CAM, actually we call them as a Jabatan Penerbangan Awal, or the Department of Civil Aviation, DCA. They introduced in after we get independence, 1958, right? So they have some changes to their logo, some changes to their organization, right? And then in 2017, finally they become independent entity. It's not under government department anymore, so they become independent under CAM, Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia. Okay, so the organization structure of CAM, it was spearheaded by the Chief Executive Officer, right? And divided into mainly two. So you can see on the left side is the regulator part of the organization, and right side is the operation part. So the regulator is the one that make sure that all the industry, civil aviation industry in Malaysia is following the requirement, the regulation, the law that they establish. They are the ones that make sure everything is in place lah. Right? Operation is the one that handle the air traffic controller operation. Because in Malaysia, our air traffic controller is not privatized; it's still handled by the authority. So under authority, they still have that function of operation. So all the ATC, their personnel, everything will be managed by this part, the operation part. And here at the center, we have like an administrative part of the camera. Right? So the ones that quite close with us in maintenance, aviation maintenance, is this one, airworthiness division. Okay. For airlines out there that operates aircraft, they usually handle with this department, flight operation division. For us, this one, airworthiness division. Alright, so that is on CAM. So next one, we have a look at the other authorities. So as I mentioned earlier on this morning, which is every country have their own authority, right? So for Malaysia, we have CAM. We're also going to have a look at the other important authority out there other than Malaysia. So first one, we have a look at this JAA and EASA. Okay, I'm sure you heard EASA, but originally they are known as a JAA. JAA stands for Joint Aviation Authorities. It's a joint ventures between various authorities in the European countries, right? And the objective of this joint venture between authorities is to establish a system. As I mentioned, that every country have their own interpretation of IQ and access, right? So at one point that each country gonna have a differences between their law, right? So JA established so that they can support the need of European industry and international consortia, which is Airbus. So when Airbus has been established in France, they found out that in order for them to compete with Boeing in US, they need to have support from multiple countries, not just France. So the consortia, the Airbus themselves established with different companies from different countries. So it will be from France, Spain, UK, and also Spain, right? So since these four countries have different authorities and different regulation, GA is established so that these four countries can have a similar standard, same standard, so that for Airbus, this consortia, to develop and make it their own aircraft, they just follow one standard in order to certify, to approve the aircraft to fly, to make sure the aircraft is certified as airworthy. Okay, so that is the initial intention. GA is coming out with a standard so that these four authorities have the similar standard or regulation, so that Airbus can follow that one standard. Okay, it's just a joint venture. It's not a regulatory body. So they exist from 1970s until recently disbanded in 2009. So when they are disbanded, this is where in the European countries they came up with a European Union, right? So the idea of European Union to basically have a standardized regulation within the Europe countries, okay? And specifically for aviation industry in the European Union, they came up with the EASA, European Aviation Safety Agency. So European Aviation Safety Agency, or EASA here, will not replace local authority. So if you, in France, you have France authority, in Spain you have Spain authority, they all still have their own power to manage their own country, but they are going to adopt a standard established by EASA. Again, JAA, EASA, regardless, they all still follow the IQ and access. It's just that the interpretation is different. So in European Union, they are all following EASA standard. Okay. Okay, so talking about EASA, currently in European countries, the European region, they have 27 states becoming a member of European Union. Okay, so all these 27 states, and out of this European Union, 5 states is not a member of European Union, but they are a member of EASA. Okay, this 27 is a member of European Union and EASA. If you are a member of European Union, you have to be a member of EASA. But we have another 5 countries here which is not a member of European Union, but they want to become a member of EASA. Right? So these 5 countries, Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and United Kingdom. United Kingdom is quite recent because previously UK is under European Union. If you recall that we have this Brexit happen, right, where UK, British wants to exit the European Union. So they exit the European Union, they become a non-EU member for the EASA. And under EASA regulation structure, this is how it looks like. Right? So we have the basic regulation that they introduce. They have initial airworthiness, continuing airworthiness, air crew, air operation, and so on. Okay, so not going to go dive into this EASA regulation yet. Other than EASA, we also have CAA UK, Civil Aviation Authority of United Kingdom. So why? We need to know about them a little bit because they are the ones that assist Malaysia to establish our own local authority. Because we are a Commonwealth country, right? So we have a lot of support from CAA UK, and still until today they become an advisor to CAA Malaysia. And we still try to adopt some of the regulation coming from them. We try to standardize our regulation to them. Another one is FAA. FAA is authority for US Federal Aviation Administration. Okay, they are the authority for the USA, and they have global influence. Why? Because they are one of the pioneers in aviation industry, and also they have one of the biggest manufacturer, which is Boeing. So Boeing is in US, right? So Boeing company is in the US. That's why we have to know about FAA a little bit. So in the US, FAA came up with their own regulation. They call it FAR, Federal Aviation Regulation. In Malaysia we have MCA, in US they have FAR. So these are the example of the regulation issued by the US authority. Okay, so there's a number, code. This is what they call as a code, airworthiness code. Okay, the law code. Other than that, we have TCCA, Transport Canada Civil Aviation, Canadian Aviation Civil Authority. They also have global influence. Why? Because they also have one of the big manufacturers coming from Canada, which is Bombardier. I'm sure you guys heard Bombardier, right? So Bombardier is a manufacturer of aircraft in Canada. Okay. And last one we have ANAC, Agência Nacional de Aviação Civil. They are the authority for Brazilian. Also have global influence because Embraer, another manufacturer. Yeah, Embraer is a major competitor for Bombardier. So they are a manufacturer based in Brazil. Alright. Okay, so here we have a short video about IASA. It's like a promotional video. So at least give you some idea on the IASA. Let's play the video and then have a look at it.
Flying is one of the safest means of transportation today. But safety is not something that just happens on its own. It takes expertise, effort, and careful thought. Common rules in safety and environmental protection at a European level are an important part of this. EASA contributes to their development. Let's take a small tour of the agency's main missions. Every aircraft designed and produced in Europe is certified by EASA using the strictest criteria. This certification ensures that the aircraft is safe to fly, even under the most extreme conditions. Each day, dozens of planes take off and land on the tarmac of this European airport. EASA's job is to ensure that all the airlines that fly to or embark in Europe are safe. Each must pass a safety check and be authorized by the agency. This authorization is organized in collaboration with each country's aviation authorities. EASA also exchanges information with other agencies. It notably takes an active role in the creation of international aviation safety standards. This always happens in close collaboration with key actors on a global level, such as the USA, Brazil, Canada, and China. Aviation, after all, is a global activity that knows no borders. Thanks to EASA's efforts, passenger safety keeps improving on a daily basis.
Okay, so that is on the various authority other than Malaysia. So, any questions so far?
No.
No. Okay, so from the video, they did mention about this that IASA has various function, right, in the European Union. But most of the time, even though they have IASA at the top, below that they have multiple countries and they all have their own authority, right? Like in Spain they have their own authority, France they have their own authority. So they still, IASA themselves have still have some of the authority function because they are member of European Union. So most of the time, EASA is controlling this part of regulation, initial airworthiness. Initial airworthiness is a regulation where on managing the certification of aircraft. So as you know, in European country, the major manufacturer is Airbus, right? So they still carry that function from JAA, that managing the regulation to be standardized within these various countries in European Union. So EASA is the one that will certify aircraft that coming out from Europe. Okay, so for Airbus aircraft, all these aircraft has been certified by EASA. Meanwhile, various regulation on the maintenance of the aircraft, licensing of the engineer, licensing of the pilot, approval of the airport, all other regulations will be managed by their local authority. So France control their own industry, Spain control their own industry, except the aircraft certification. So new aircraft will be managed by EASA, the rest of the regulation will be managed by their own local authority. Okay? So, any question?
No.
Alright, so if you don't have any question, let's take a short 5-minute break before we finish up the training, and then I will do the conclusion and everything, and we check the learning outcome, then we'll be finished for the day. Alright, thank you. Alright. Class, alright, welcome back to the training. Alright, so we are at the end of the session. So we finished with our content and everything, right? And right now we are doing a summary. What are the things that we covered for today, right? For the past 1 hour. And then we'll do a bit of a Q&A. If you have any questions, then you can ask. And at the same time, we'll do a little bit of a quiz as well. Okay. So to summarize everything that we learned for today, basically we start off with history, a little bit history about the ICAO, before ICAO become, right? So what are the first thing that you remember? Before ICAO came about, what do we have? ICAN, right? So in 1922 we have ICAN established, but before the ICAN themselves, we have 8 countries try to come up with the first agreement, then come another agreement in 1906, first in 1903, then 1906 second agreement, third agreement, third convention, and then finally in 1922 they came up with the ICAN, right? So after that, World War II happened, right? World War II happened, and then they tried to establish another convention like this, and finally in 1944 they came up with the Chicago Convention. Okay, so that is the famous name of Chicago Convention, but actual name is Convention on International Civil Aviation. Okay, ICA. So within this Chicago Convention, how many countries that signed this agreement and become contracting states? 58. Is it? 58 countries, okay, that sign and become contracting. That's the term, contracting states. Okay, contracting state, right? In 1944, so they all signed this agreement. And one of the things inside the agreement, they're going to come up with a standard and recommended practice and procedure. So where is the standard to be established? Who is going to establish this standard? They will come up with an organization known as ICAO, correct, ICAO. ICA, from ICA here it become O, International Civil Aviation Organization, established in 1947, and in October they become one of the agency under United Nations, sponsored by the United Nations. Alright, and in where is the headquarters of ICAO? Montreal, correct, Montreal, Canada. Okay, and Malaysia, we become a member of ICAO, right? When we gain independence? 1957 we became independence. 1 year after that, 1958, Malaysia joined. joins ICAO, become a ICAO member. Right. So after we become an ICAO member, of course we need to follow the ICAO standard. So what are the standards established by the ICAO? Annexes. Correct. ICAO annexes. So until today, how many annexes we have established by the ICAO? 19 annexes has been established by the ICAO, right? Okay, so after that, Malaysia become a member. In order for Malaysia to enforce the ICAO standard or annexes and make it as a law in Malaysia, what are the things that needs to be established? In 1969, Malaysia introduced their Act on Civil Aviation, Act number 3, also known as Civil Aviation Act. Okay, Civil Aviation Act 1969 or Act number 3. So what is the function of this act? Basically, this act will give power. The government of Malaysia, the Parliament of Malaysia, give the power of enforcing the Civil Aviation Act to the Director General, DGCA, Director General of Civil Aviation, or now we call it as a CEO lah, CEO of CAM, to enforce the Chicago Convention. Okay, so DGCA and CEO will give the power, will be given the power by the government to enforce Chicago Convention. So once they get the power from the Malaysian government, they came up with the regulation lah. This one they get power, came up with regulation in 1996. The first regulation MK 1996. Malaysian Civil Aviation Regulation in 1996, and the most recent revision or changes to the regulation is MK 2016. Okay, so this is in 2016. Okay, 2017 there's a changes to the act, which is from DGCA it become CEO. So this is happened in 2017 lah. Alright. So CEO of CAM is given the power by the government of Malaysia. Okay, so there is a revision into the act, Act number 3, and they also introducing CAM Act. CAM Act 2017. Alright. So in order for the CAM themselves to enforce the regulation, inside the act there also a clause says that other than following the regulation, Malaysia industry also, aviation industry in Malaysia also have to follow various notices, circular, all these things, right? All the document, whoever document signed or issued by the CEO of CAM will have to be a law basically, right? Because it's stated inside the act, right? So what are the document? For example, we have CAD, Civil Aviation Directive, we have CAGM, Civil Aviation Guidance Material, etc. Alright. So that is the structure of the and also the history of the civil aviation in Malaysia, starting from the inception of ICAN and ICAO, Chicago Convention, all the way until Malaysia today lah. We have the structure of Act, MK, and also directive, guidance material, circular, notices, etc. Alright. So far, any question? No? Good, yeah? Alright.
Just now you mentioned there's a different country have different NAA.
Yeah.
So, which one do you think is the most followed authority
The best.
the best?
The best.
The best.
Good question. Alright. So, this is a personal opinion. Alright. Of course, we are in Malaysia, we can say, okay, Malaysia is the best authority in Malaysia, of course. Right? But at the same time, Malaysia is not a large country. So, we don't really have a big aviation industry to manage. Right? So, the most biggest authority in the world is basically FAA for the US, and also EASA for the European Union. Okay, so FAA is the one that basically the pioneer. Okay, Chicago Convention, they are the ones that promote the Chicago Convention, the US government, right? So they are the one, the first one that established the FAA. Even the first large aircraft manufacturer also coming from US, like Boeing, McDonnell Douglas. Right. While in European Union we have Airbus, right? So if you compare between these two, I prefer EASA because Malaysia also, since we have the advisor of CAA UK, since we are a Commonwealth country, right? So we have CAA UK, and CAA UK regulation structure is the one that has been established initially, and most of the regulation of EASA is actually derived from CAA UK regulation. Because CAA UK is also one of the pioneers in aviation industry. Other than FAA, we have UK. You remember Concorde, the most fast airliner for passenger, for commercial, for public. Right, it's Concorde. Concorde is a manufacturer under the UK. It's a consortium under UK countries. It's a UK company. So a lot of regulation coming from UK, and most of the regulation from EASA has been derived from UK. And since Malaysia is also a Commonwealth country, CAA Malaysia, most of the regulation is also adopting the UK regulation. So if you ask me, then between these various authority, I prefer EASA, UK, CAM, because we are following similar, same structure or regulation. Meanwhile, with FAA is quite different. Okay, it's not really the same standard as most of the world are using. Okay, because in EASA we have 32 member states. Right? In UK they are still following similar structure. Malaysia also following similar structure. Singapore, Thailand, various other authority in ASEAN region, in the Middle East, they all following the similar structure like EASA in Malaysia and also in UK. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Alright. Okay. What else? Do you still remember the reason why we signed the Chicago Convention? The main reason. Anyone?
So, you can fly to other state.
Yes.
Same reference.
Correct. The idea is that we want our airline registered in Malaysia recognized internationally worldwide, because almost all countries in Malaysia in the world is a contracting state of ICAO. So for Malaysian airline, AirAsia, Malaysia Airline, Firefly, whichever airline registered in Malaysia, right? In order for them to apply approval to fly to a certain country like Singapore, for Singapore authority, it's easier for them to accept Malaysian airline to fly into the country and give a license or approval to fly to their country, because they believe that Malaysian regulation is up to the standard of ICAO, because everyone is a member of ICAO, right? So I think yeah, that's all on the summary of today's training. Again, if you have any question, this is my personal phone number. So if you have any question related to what we learned for today, okay, you can WhatsApp me. Okay, and you can personally WhatsApp me to ask any question related to this subject. I'll try my best to answer whatever question that you have. If I believe that if you're not comfortable asking in class today, then you can directly WhatsApp or contact me. I prefer WhatsApp rather than call, because it's much easier for me to process your question instead of calling, because I might quite be busy with my work. So I prefer WhatsApp and I can answer your question at my own convenience. Okay? This is my phone number if you have any question. Alright. So before we finish the class, last thing that you have to do. Okay, we have to have your feedback. So everyone take out your phone, and then this is a QR code. I would like you guys to answer a survey question. So basically, these are the steps to answer. The first one, you need to choose the type of training. Okay. So number one would be choose the engineering crew maintenance with CAE instructor. That's the first selection. Second one is to choose the training center, which is Kuala Lumpur. Course type would be initial, aircraft platform, just choose others, okay, because we don't go specific into what aircraft. And number three, if you want to answer the question or the survey in Bahasa or in English, you can comfortably choose from the box number 3 there. Right? So if you prefer Malay, then choose Bahasa Malaysia. If not, you can answer it in English. Okay, so you're gonna have multiple questions on the feedback of the training, on the course content, on the facility, on the cafeteria, on our food, on whatever that you want to leave a feedback, you can do so. Just some guidance here before you start answering. So most of the questions will be based on a scale, from scale of 0 to 10. Okay, so if a 0 to 6, usually if you are not happy with us, then you can select between 0 to 6. If you're in between, in the middle, 7 to 8 is unsure. And last one, if you are satisfied and you feel that you want to recommend this training to your friend, your colleagues, or other organization, then you might choose 9 or 10. So I recommend to choose 9 or 10 if you're happy with our training today. Okay, so please scan and then just provide your feedback. Thank you. Okay, all right? Alright, so thank you so much for your feedback. That's all for today. I hope you guys learned a lot of new things. Again, if you have any questions, that's my phone number. You still can contact me. So I hope to see you guys again in the near future, maybe in a different training. So see you guys. Thank you, everyone.